spider mites. G'day, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Kathy. This is where I talk about my plants and all my other pet projects. For my return visitors, thank you so much for coming back. So today we're going to talk about spider mites. Ugh, spider mites. Who wants spider mites, right? After all the horror stories that we've heard, they pretty much almost terrify me. Now, if you're unaware of it, a few weeks ago, one of my very first subscribers, Anonymous, big shout out to Anonymous, she very kindly let me know that I might have spider mites on my white syngonium. And she was right. And I actually did film right after I discovered the spider mites. And I'll insert some of the footage here so you can see my reaction. Oh my God, it's been such a nightmare, but I definitely do have spider mites on my syngonium white butterfly. Now I'm going to have to go and inspect every single one of my plants to make sure that I don't have any more. And I was just congratulating myself a week ago, thinking, I haven't had any issues with my plants this winter. I'm sure you can see the panic on my face. I think we all have that reaction when we find pests on any of our plants. Of all the pests, that one was the one I dreaded the most. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about spider mites and the different treatments that are available. So what are spider mites? Spider mites are actually not insects. They're from the arachnid family. Things like scorpions and ticks, I think, which I found very interesting. I never knew that before. And they're tiny, like seriously so small. They're very hard to see or identify. I've seen them described as no bigger than a full stop on a page. So you can just imagine how small they are. The most common and destructive probably spider mites in Australia are called the two-spotted mite, and I need to refer to my notes because I can't pronounce this, Tetranicus urticii, and I know I mispronounced that, so I'll put it on the screen. They are yellow and green in colour with two large dark spots on their back, and in autumn they turn a reddish colour and are called the red spider. Spider mites have a needle-like sucking mouth, which is how they cause the damage to our plants, and they form colonies by spinning a very fine silken web which allows them to move from leaf to leaf. And the females can lay up to 300 eggs over a 14-day period, so they reproduce prolifically. And if you don't get them under control early, they can really cause serious damage to plants, including in greeneries and nurseries. How to identify spider mites? Usually you will find a silk webbing on the underside of the leaves where the petiole, the stem, meets the leaf. That's usually where they like to spin their webs. Another way is if you see tiny little white dots spread out on your leaves, whether on the underside or on the top. And I also read about another trick where you get a plain white piece of paper, put it down, and then shake your plant over it. And if you see any spots on the paper, that's usually spider mites. Now, if you have incredibly poor eyesight like me, get one of these. I just bought it actually. It even has a light. And I love it. It is wonderful. I did get a smaller one, which I found just did not magnify enough, but this one is fantastic. I can't recall where I bought it from, probably eBay, and if I can find the item, I'll link it in my description box below. But these are great. Another way that works for me is using these tiny little LED lenser flashlight, and it is extremely powerful, and that's the only way I was able to actually see the webbing underneath any of my leaves. And of course, if you see damage to your plant, if you see that it's not doing well, if you see yellowing leaves and things like that, definitely inspect it, because most likely the damage will be caused by pests. Could be other factors, but it's always good to be able to rule out pests. Now, as to the damage that they cause, spider mites suck the sap from the underside of the leaves. They feed on the chlorophyll in the leaves. And if it gets really bad, then the leaf could eventually turn yellow and die. And you'll also see things like this. I'll give you a close-up shot, but these yellow marks on the leaves, that I believe is the spider mite damage. Now I could be wrong because I'm not an expert, but from what I have read, that appears to be the kind of damage that spider mites can cause to your plants. So how do you treat them? How do we get rid of these pesky little things? The best way really is prevention. And when I say prevention, I'm not talking about having to spray your plants with anything in particular. It might slow it down, that I can accept, but I've not seen enough evidence to suggest that it will definitely stop them getting any pests whatsoever. I personally use sea salt, which is a treatment for plants, a vitamin, a pick-me-up, and it is also meant to help plants combat pests, but it doesn't prevent them. I do think it definitely played a part with my plants, but I will get into that later. So how do you prevent getting spider mites? They generally like hot and dry conditions. So if there are temperatures below 25 degrees Celsius, and say the humidity is 60% or over, then it slows down their reproduction cycle. It won't prevent them entirely, but the conditions are not conducive to spider mites and they're less likely to attack. Plants that are water stressed are more likely to be attacked by spider mites. In other words, if they're really dry, then spider mites will love that environment. So try to keep your plants watered properly. Another way to help prevent getting spider mites is removing any dead leaves and debris from the soil, and also cleaning off any dust on your leaves or plants, because apparently they enjoy that as well. And if I haven't already mentioned this really goes without saying. If ever you find pests on any of your plants, immediately isolate it from your other plants, because if you don't, it could easily spread to those other plants. So now we'll talk about treatment. How do you treat them? The first thing you should do is prune off all dead leaves. Different treatments that seem to work is an alcohol and dish soap spray. Some people use pressure washing. I've even read that people use vacuums to suck them up. There's also insecticidal soap, which is, I think, basically dish soap and water. And there's also neem oil, diluted of course. And there's also what a lot of people use in Australia, which is white oil. And lastly, you can introduce beneficial insects into your home, which I think a lot of people would not want to do. But that is an option. I think particularly if you have a lot of plants, it might be one of the only ways to deal with it. Some people simply chuck the plant out because they don't want to risk it spreading to the rest of their plants. I'm a little reluctant to do that. I get extremely attached to my plants and I really don't want to throw them out unless I absolutely have to. And having not dealt with spider mites before, I wanted to see if I could treat them before I took that drastic step and threw them out. But that is always one option. Now, most of these treatments are organic, and I'm sure that there are insecticides that you can use. I'm a little reluctant to use insecticides unless it was my last resort. So that's a list of some of the treatments that people use for combating spider mites. If you have any other suggestions of treatments that have worked for you, leave a comment down below. Now, most of these treatments need to be repeated 2 to 3 times per week and until you see that the spider mites are gone. Now, I'll I'll insert some footage as to what I did with my Syngonium white butterfly. So I hope you guys can see this. I have my white oil. I've already made it up previously. Now I'm just going to spray all the foliage, give it a thorough soaking, under the leaves particularly. I wanted to add that spider mites are known for becoming resistant to certain treatments, and if you find that a treatment you're using isn't working, then you can alternate with different treatments and see if that helps. Yeah, so this is the culprit that started my spider mite issue. I don't think I can call it an infestation. I actually didn't have that many plants that were affected. And I'm still not 100% sure if they were spider mites or not. Regardless, I did treat this with white oil. Now, for those who don't know, I'm not sure if it's called horticultural oil overseas, but in Australia we call it white oil. And basically what it is vegetable oil and a little bit of dish soap, and then you dilute it quite heavily into water, which is a recipe I got from Gardening Australia. I'll write down the recipe in the description box below for anyone who's interested. But I have found this extremely effective in dealing with the pests that I've had to face. I haven't always been able to identify them, except for aphids. I don't seem to have a problem identifying those. I have had mealybugs, but only I think a couple on one of my plants. I used the white oil on that, and then I put the plant outside because it was summer, and I haven't had an issue since. And on all the other plants that I found spider mites on, I treated them also with white oil, and at the moment they're all clear, so I'm very happy about that. That seems to have worked really well for me. I still check them every week just to ensure that I haven't missed any, but so far so good. I do wonder if my spraying the foliage and the soil every few weeks with sea salt has helped that, because I definitely didn't have a huge infestation. Regardless, perhaps the combination of sea salt and the white oil helped me get rid of them. I don't know. So yes, I am happy to report that at the moment I seem to be spider mite free. Yay! Oh, I can't tell you what a relief it is. I was really worried actually, because I had heard so many horror stories, but so far my plants seem to be doing a lot better. Well, that's going to be it for this video, except for mentioning that I don't know if people are aware, but Melbourne is in lockdown again. So if you guys are in lockdown, I feel for you as well, because I know how hard it is to be confined to your home. Okay, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll answer to the best of my abilities. And if you found this video useful, you can give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, you can. And for those of you who have, thank you, love you guys, really appreciate it. Until next time, take care all. Bye.